It was 3:14 in the morning when I realized he hadn't moved in 20 minutes. I'm a night clerk, have been for 4 years. I work the BP off Route 9 in central Georgia, about 12 miles south of a town called Eastman. There's not much out there, pines on both sides of the highway, a Dollar General that closes at 9. The nearest 24-hour anything besides us is a Waffle House 8 miles north, and even that one goes quiet by 2 on weekdays. I was working a solo Tuesday shift. My coworker Darius had called out sick around 10. Manager said push through, it was a slow night, he wasn't wrong. Between midnight and 3 I had maybe 4 customers, 2 truckers, a woman in a minivan buying formula who looked like she hadn't slept in days, a teenager who bought chips and didn't say a word. Then the white Dodge Ram pulled in around 2:50. He parked at pump 6, the furthest from the door. Pumps 1 and 2 were both open, both closer. I noticed that, but people do strange things at 3 in the morning, so I let it go. What I couldn't let go was that he didn't get out. He just sat there in the cab, engine running. I could see the exhaust rising in the cold February air, thin wisps catching the lot lights and dissolving. I could see his shape through the windshield, just sitting, hands on the wheel maybe, not moving. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I texted Darius out of boredom, told him some guy was idling at pump 6. Darius sent back a shrug emoji. I put my phone down. At the 20-minute mark, the driver's door opened. He stepped out slowly, tall, 6'2", 6'3", work boots, dark jeans, a gray hoodie with no logo. He didn't reach for a credit card. He didn't look at the pump at all. He just stood there next to the truck with his hands in his front pocket and looked at the store. Looked at me. I was behind the counter under full fluorescent light with nothing between us but plate glass. He could see me perfectly. I was very aware of that. He walked to the door, the chime sounded. He came in without any of the usual noise, no keys jingling, no phone out. He walked straight to the counter, put both hands flat on it, and said he needed a phone charger. I pointed him to the rack by the drink coolers. He didn't move. He asked which one worked for an older Samsung. I said the packaging would tell him. He nodded slowly. Then he walked over and stood there for a long time, long enough that I started pretending to restock cigarette cartons just to have something to do with my hands. The store was very quiet. The cooler units hum all the time, that low refrigeration drone you stop hearing after the first hour of a shift. I heard it then. I also heard him breathing, slow and even, controlled, not the ragged breath of someone who'd been driving hard, the kind of breathing a person does when they're working at it. He brought a charger to the counter, $14.79. He reached into his hoodie and pulled out cash. Then he counted it, not once, 3 times. Same bills, same order, same slow thumb movement across each one. $14, 3/4, 4 pennies. Exact change. I know how that sounds, but there's a feeling when something is off and you can't name it yet. The counting, 3 times, the way he didn't look down at the money while he did it. He looked at me. His eyes weren't wild or nervous. They were flat and patient. The kind of patience a man has when he's already decided something and is just waiting for conditions to be right. He took the charger and went back to the truck. He didn't leave. I ran through the reasonable explanations. Tired driver, waiting for someone. I've had people camp in the lot before, usually truckers, but the stillness of him was different. Around 3:40, a black Civic came down the ramp off Route 9 and pulled up to pump 3. A woman got out, mid-30s, dressed like she'd just left an office. She started pumping and looked at her phone. The white Ram's engine turned over. The Dodge pulled forward away from pump 6. I thought he was finally leaving. He drove to the far end of the lot near the air pump and the dumpsters, and then he stopped. He didn't pull onto Route 9. He didn't circle back toward the road. He just parked there, facing the woman at pump 3. I picked up my phone, no signal, 1 bar, then nothing. That happens out there sometimes. The towers are sparse and the weather does things. It had started to drizzle, that thin, cold February drizzle you get in South Georgia that isn't quite rain but makes everything slick and gray. It had fogged the lower corners of the plate glass and put a halo around every light in the lot. I wiped a section of glass with my sleeve and kept watching. I tried my manager, 3 failed attempts. I tried 911, same result. The landline behind the counter has been broken since October. I put in for a repair 4 times. Every time the work order disappeared. The woman finished pumping, got back in her car, and pulled north onto Route 9. Gone in about 15 seconds. The Dodge didn't move. Now it was just me and him. I went to the back room and got the thing I keep there. A Mossberg 500 pump action, legally owned, that my uncle gave me when I started this job. I brought it up front and kept it under the counter. I wasn't going to point it at anyone, I just needed it close. At 3:58, the truck pulled back across the lot. He didn't go to a pump, he drove slowly around the building. I lost sight of him as he went around the side. There's no camera back there. That camera has been out for 6 months. I waited. The waiting was the worst part. The store felt smaller than it ever had. The cooler hum seemed louder. I stood behind the counter with both hands on the edge of it and watched the dark stretch of lot where he disappeared. I could hear my own heartbeat, not racing, just heavy, the kind of pulse you feel in your throat. He came around the other side about 2 minutes later, slow roll. He pulled up parallel to the front of the store, maybe 30 feet out, and stopped. He left his headlights on. They pointed straight through the plate glass, straight at me. I couldn't see him through the glare. I picked up my phone one more time and just held it, willing one bar to become two, nothing. Then the headlights cut off. My eyes adjusted, the truck was still there, and the driver's door was open. He was already out. He was standing about 15 feet from the door, just inside the reach of the lot lights, and he was holding something. At first I thought it was a phone, then a radio. Then I understood what it was. A handheld police scanner, and I could see his lips moving slightly, like he was listening hard to something. That was the moment I knew. Not because of the scanner alone, it was everything together, the timing of the Civic, the way he'd watched that woman, the exact change, the counting, the circling, the back lot. He'd been checking something, and the scanner told me what. He was monitoring dispatch, making sure no one was coming. He'd been doing it methodically, patiently, the way a person does when they've done it before and know exactly how long they need to wait. The Charger purchase was cover, maybe reconnaissance. The pass around the back was to check for exits, blind spots, other people. It was a process. I was looking at someone running a process. I don't scare easy, I don't make jumps I can't back up, but I went completely cold. I bent down and picked up the Mossberg. I pumped it once, that's the loudest sound that gun makes. I did it standing up straight, where he could see me clearly through the glass, in full fluorescent light. He stopped moving. We looked at each other, it felt like a long time, it was probably 4 seconds. Then headlights swept across the lot from the highway. A Peterbilt semi coming down the exit ramp, air brakes hissing, rolling toward the diesel pumps on the side. The driver climbed down from the cab, a big guy in a Carhartt jacket, and stretched his arms over his head. He had no idea he'd just changed everything. The man with the scanner looked at the trucker, then he looked back at me. Then he walked to the Dodge, got in, and pulled out onto Route 9 heading south. I was shaking when the trucker came through the door. I asked him to stay until my phone signal came back. He could tell something was wrong without me having to say it. He bought 2 coffees, leaned against the counter, and stayed. Signal came back around 4:30. I called the county sheriff's department. A deputy came out around 6 in the morning. She was patient. She took down everything I described, wrote up the truck and the partial plate I'd managed to get. She didn't tell me I was imagining things, but she didn't tell me what she thought it meant either. She said she'd look into it and left her card. 2 days later I called the number, got voicemail, left a message, never heard back. I don't know what that man was planning. I don't know if he'd done it somewhere else before, somewhere without a Mossberg under the counter and a trucker with bad timing. I don't know if they ever found the white Ram. I transferred to a different store 3 weeks later. Daytime hours, busier road. I still pump gas with my back to the lot sometimes without thinking. Then I remember and I stop and I turn around and look. Old habits are hard to fix. On the third hostel in 3 different cities, his duffel bag was still under bunk number 2. I want to be clear about something before I start. I'm not the kind of person who panics. I've traveled alone before. I know shared dorms attract all kinds. Snorers, people who come in at 3 in the morning with the lights on, guys who clip their toenails on the ladder. None of that rattled me. This was different. My name is Cal. I was 24, 3 weeks out of college, with 3 months to burn before a job started in Chicago. A friend of mine, Derek, was meeting me in Denver on day 22. Until then, I was on my own. I'd booked the whole route on Hostel World Albuquerque to Flagstaff to Moab, 8 bunk dorms the whole way. I had a 65-liter Osprey on my back, a MacBook wrapped in a flannel shirt, my passport, about $400 cash in a money belt, and a printed paper itinerary folded into my jacket pocket. My mom had insisted on the paper copy, old habit from a trip to Portugal. The route cut through the high desert southwest. Red rock, big sky, gas stations with 1 pump. I loved every mile of it. I noticed him on day 4 in Flagstaff. Hostel was off Route 66, a converted motor lodge called the Turquoise Key. 8 bunks, a ceiling fan that worked half the time, a communal kitchen that smelled like someone's rice had boiled over a week ago and nobody had cleaned the element. I'd taken bunk 5 top. He was already on bunk 2 when I got there. Medium height, late 30s, dark hair going gray at the temples. He had one of those large black duffel bags, the kind you see in army surplus stores, and he kept it close. Always under the foot of his bunk. He nodded when I came in. I nodded back. Normal enough. There was a free walking tour the next morning. Flagstaff has a good one, takes you through the historic downtown up toward the observatory. I'd signed up the night before. When the group gathered outside the coffee shop on Aspen Avenue, he was there, gray temples, standing at the back of the group, hands in his jacket pockets. I figured coincidence, popular tour. After the tour, a few of us split off toward a taco spot the guide had mentioned. Gray Temples walked near me for half a block, then said, "You heading to Sedona next or straight up to Moab?" I stopped walking. "How did you know I was going to Moab?" He smiled. "Most people on this route hit Sedona first. Just figured you were probably doing the loop." I'd heard that kind of explanation before. I used it on myself for the next 2 hours. That night in the kitchen I was making pasta, my back to the room. Then I felt it, that prickling across the back of the neck, the kind your body registers before your brain catches up. I turned around. He was on the other side of the counter, phone down at his hip, already looking at the range hood. I couldn't prove anything. There was no way to prove anything. I ate my pasta and went to bed. Sedona I skipped. I'd originally planned a night there, but I rebooked at midnight on the bus app. A 7 in the morning Greyhound out of Flagstaff to Page, then a connection north. I told nobody. Hadn't talked to another soul about the change. It wasn't on any of my social media. I hadn't even texted Derek. The hostel in Moab was called Canyon Reach, 6 bunks. I'd booked it 3 weeks earlier. I checked in around 4 in the afternoon, got my key card, found my bunk. His duffel bag was under bunk 2. I stood in the doorway. The room smelled like dried mud and someone's cedar-scented deodorant. A box fan in the window pushed warm air around without cooling anything. I stood there long enough that another guest coming up behind me had to say "excuse me" before I stepped inside. He came in about 40 minutes after me. He didn't look surprised to see me. He set his jacket on the mattress and said, "Good drive." "Bus," I said. "Right," he said. I lay back on my bunk and stared at the slats above me. I went to the front desk that evening. The girl working it was maybe 20, picking at the corner of a sticker on the countertop. I asked if it was possible for one guest's booking information to be seen by another guest. She said no. I asked if there was any way someone could view which beds were taken and by whom. She said the system was private. I asked how the man in bunk 2 had known to book bunk 2 in the same room as me across 3 different cities. She looked at me like I'd asked her to solve a proof. "People like their spot," she said. "Bunk 2's popular, lower bunk near the window." I thanked her and walked back. That night I went through my pack. I don't know exactly what I was looking for. Everything was there. Passport, cash, MacBook. But the flannel shirt the laptop was wrapped in had been refolded. I was sure of it. I do a specific fold, one sleeve crosses over the other. It was just folded flat now, flat and neat. Nothing was missing, not a dollar. But someone had been in there. I sat in the dark for a while. The box fan turned in the window. Somewhere down the hall a door closed, and then the building went quiet except for the low hum of a vending machine. He was asleep, or pretending to be. The 2 Australian guys in the room were already out cold. I watched his duffel bag on the floor in the dim light from the hallway. It sat there, squared against the bed frame, patient. In 3 cities I had never seen the zipper on that bag pulled back more than an inch. The next morning he asked me something. We were both in the kitchen before 7. He was at the table with a coffee. I was at the counter pretending to look for something in my pack. He asked quietly, like he was asking what time it was, "Is that a MacBook Pro or the Air?" I went cold. I hadn't taken my laptop out in the common areas, not once. I used it only in the bunk, under the covers, screen dim. The only way he could know I had it was if he'd gone into the Osprey and unwrapped the flannel himself, felt the weight of it. Maybe turned it over in his hands in the dark while I slept 6 feet away and the Australians snored through the whole thing. I let myself think about that, actually think about it. I looked at him for a moment. He was looking down at his coffee like he hadn't asked anything at all, hands flat on the table. A man who'd had plenty of practice at looking relaxed. "I don't have one," I said. He nodded slowly. "Right." I went back to my bunk. The Australians were packing up to check out. I sat on the mattress and I thought it through plainly without trying to find the normal explanation. He knew my route before I'd told him. He'd gotten into my pack. He was following me city to city. He had a bag he'd never opened around anyone, not once. I don't know what was in it, I still don't. But I was done wondering. I had a non-refundable booking in Green River for 2 more nights. I had a rental car pickup in Denver in 6 days. I had a bus ticket for the following afternoon. None of that mattered anymore. I opened Hostel World and canceled Green River, ate the fee, switched to Booking.com and found a motel in Price, Utah, private room, $48, a La Quinta that looked like it was built in 1987 and renovated once since. Booked it. Then I messaged Derek. I sent him the photo I'd quietly taken that morning in the kitchen, gray temples, face clear, looking down at his coffee. I sent Derek his description, the name he'd given me when we'd introduced ourselves on day 1, and I told Derek that if I didn't check in by 10 that night to call the Moab City Police non-emergency line. Then I texted my mom, told her I was fine, told her I loved her. At 5 in the morning, I was at the Moab Greyhound stop on US 191 with my Osprey between my feet and my hand on the top strap. The sky was going from black to dark blue over the canyon walls, around 40 degrees, dry and still. My breath came out in short, pale clouds. I hadn't slept. The stop was just a painted curb, no shelter, a single streetlight buzzing above me that flickered twice and held. An old Dodge Ram sat idling at the curb, cracked side mirror, and I watched it until it pulled away. He wasn't at the bus stop, he wasn't on the bus. I rode to Green River and transferred, got to Price before noon, checked into the La Quinta, locked the door, propped my pack against it, slept for 11 hours. Derek picked me up in Denver 4 days later and I told him the whole thing. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Do you think he was going to rob you?" I said I didn't know. I don't think rob is the right word. 7 months later, I was in an online travel group. A woman who'd done the Southwest Loop the previous fall mentioned a man at a hostel in Sedona who'd made her uneasy. She'd filed a report with the local sheriff's office. I asked her to describe him. Gray at the temples, black duffel bag, never opened it. She said the deputy she'd spoken to had taken down the description and hadn't acted surprised. I don't know what happened after that. I never found a news story. I don't know if that's good or not. I still travel, I still love it, but I book a private room now, every single time, even if it means eating rice out of a gas station cup for 2 days to make the math work. Pay the extra every time. On the 3rd night, it said my name. I want to be clear about something before I get into this. I'm not someone who spooks easily. I've been camping since I was 8 years old. Solo trips, winter trips, trips so remote the nearest road was a 12-mile hike back through switchbacks. I know what coyotes sound like when they scream. I know what a fox sounds like when it mimics a woman crying. I know the difference between a deer pushing through brush and something moving with intention. What happened in the Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois last October was different. I was 3 days into a solo backpacking loop through the Garden of the Gods wilderness section. I'd parked my Tacoma at the Pounds Hollow trailhead, right off Illinois Route 1, and planned to be out 6 days total. I'd done this loop twice before. I knew the water sources, the established campsites, the tricky creek crossing near the western ridge where the stepping stones go slick with algae in the fall. By the 3rd night, I knew every sound that forest made at rest. That's what made it so obvious when something new moved in. The first sign came on the afternoon of day 2. I'd stopped to filter water from a creek and noticed a boot print in the mud on the opposite bank. Deep lug sole, maybe a size 10 or 11. Pointed toward the creek, then nothing. No exit print on the far side. No second print beside it, just the one. I looked up and down both banks. Nothing. I told myself someone had waded across, headed off trail. People do that. I kept walking. That night I camped on the ridgeline near the area locals call High Knob. No official campsite, just a flat shelf of rock with a good view east. I ate, hung my food bag, got into my sleeping bag around 9. The temperature dropped fast, upper 20s by midnight. The stars were the kind you only see when there's no light for 30 miles in any direction. Dense, cold-looking. The Milky Way a pale streak straight overhead. I was almost asleep when I heard the whistle. One short note, clean, like someone signaling. It came from the tree line about 60 yards north of me. I sat up, unzipped my bag, listened. Silence, not the ordinary silence of a forest at night. A forest is never actually quiet. There's always the creak of a branch, the tick of cooling rock, a leaf skittering. This was a held silence, the kind that follows a sound that shouldn't have been made. Even the wind had stopped. I told myself it was a bird. There are birds that call at night. Eastern screech owls, whippoorwills, I know their sounds. This wasn't one of them. It was too clean, too short, too deliberate. But I lay back down and I went to sleep. Morning came without incident. I broke camp, made coffee, started south on the trail. The weather had shifted overnight. A flat gray ceiling had moved in from the west, the kind of cloud cover that makes noon look like late afternoon. I made 9 miles by early afternoon and set up at a designated campsite near a creek called Sand Cave Branch. I saw no one on the trail that day, not unusual for a weekday in late October. What was unusual was the stick. A branch, maybe 3 feet long, propped at an angle against the post of the campsite sign. Propped the same way I prop my trekking poles against trees when I stop to rest, crossed at the top, leaning, specific, not something that happens by wind or by accident. I stood there looking at it and felt the wrongness in a way I couldn't immediately explain. The way you feel when something in your house has been moved and you can't yet name what it is. I stood there for a long time. Then I pulled it down, tossed it into the brush, and set up my tent. I kept my headlamp close that night. Nothing happened. I slept light, but I slept. The third day was when it started moving with me. I know how that sounds, stay with me. I was on the eastern section of the loop, coming down a long descent through dense oak and hickory. The trail was soft with leaf fall. That muffled my footsteps, and I realized later would have muffled someone else's too. I stopped twice to check my map. Same routine each time, pull out the map, hold it against my chest, stand still, look around. Habitual, automatic. The second time I stopped, I heard something stop behind me. Not a gradual slowing, a stop, the way a person stops. I turned around, trees, slope, leaves, nothing. I kept walking, slower now, listening. Every time I walked, something walked. Not every footstep, it wasn't mimicking me beat for beat, more like it was tracking me, moving when I moved, stopping when I stopped. The footfalls were heavier than a deer, quieter than they should have been for something that size. Deer move in bursts and pauses. This moved the way something moves when it is paying close, careful attention to something else. I tried to catch it, stopped sudden, turned fast, nothing visible, but the sound stopped the instant I did, every single time. This went on for about 2 hours. I told myself it was a hunter. It was October. Bow season was open. Some guy in camo who didn't want to announce himself, moving parallel through the trees. That was my explanation. I held on to it. Then I reached the campsite near the rock formation the map calls Camel Rock. A couple, maybe late 40s, were breaking down their tent. They'd been out 4 nights. I asked if they'd seen anyone else on the trail. The man shook his head. We haven't seen a soul since Monday. It was Thursday. My cell had been dead since the first morning. No signal anywhere on that ridge. I set up camp after they left, ate, watched the dark come in between the trees, not all at once but in layers, the light pulling back from the ground first while the sky stayed pale longer. By 6 it was full dark, temperature back into the 20s. I could see my breath inside the tent's vestibule when I leaned out to zip the rain fly. I didn't make a fire, it just didn't feel right to announce myself. Around 11 I heard it, footsteps circling the tent, slow, deliberate, a full circle, maybe 20 feet out, moving through dry leaves with a steady, unhurried crunch, then a stop. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. I held completely still inside my sleeping bag. I was on my back, staring up at the tent ceiling. I became aware of how thin the nylon was between me and whatever was out there, a 1/4 inch of fabric. I could smell my own sweat, stale and sharp. Then it said my name. Not yelled, not asked, just said, the way you'd say something out loud to yourself, flat, almost quiet, one word. My heart did something I've never felt it do before. It didn't speed up. It stopped for a half second and then started again harder, a single heavy knock against the inside of my chest, and then a rapid, lurching rhythm I felt all the way up in my throat. It didn't sound like my voice, but it sounded like it had been near my voice long enough to learn what my voice was trying to sound like. The shape of it was right, the substance was wrong. There was nothing behind it, just the flat, hollow shape of my name coming out of the dark. I don't know how else to describe it. I did not make a sound, I did not turn on my headlamp. I reached into my pack and put my hand on my knife, a fixed blade Mora I've carried for years, the handle worn smooth where my thumb sits, and I held it. Not because I thought it would necessarily help, because it was the only real thing I had. For 45 minutes I didn't move. I track time by counting, sets of 10 breaths running tally. It keeps the mind from spiraling, I counted. The forest outside was completely quiet, no creak sounds, no wind, just that held, pressurized silence that had followed me since the whistle 2 nights before. Then footsteps again, moving away north, slow at first, then faster, then gone. I had my tent down at 2:15 in the morning, full pack in under 7 minutes. I have never moved that fast in the dark. I hiked out by headlamp 3 miles back to the Pounds Hollow trailhead. The trail was good, but the dark was absolute, my light throwing a narrow cone that made the trees on either side look like they were leaning in. The leaves under my boots sounded unbearably loud. At one point I thought I heard something pacing me in the trees to the left, a soft, rhythmic sound just out of sync with my footsteps. I didn't stop. I didn't look. I hit the parking lot at 4:30. My Tacoma was the only vehicle there. The gravel lot was empty and flat and the most beautiful thing I'd seen in days. I locked the doors and drove north on Route 1, then cut west on Route 13 to the Circle K off Route 34 in Harrisburg, got a coffee, sat under the fluorescent lights for an hour before I felt anything close to calm. The lights hummed. The coffee was bad. I didn't care about either. I drove home without stopping again. About 2 weeks later, I contacted the Shawnee National Forest Ranger District through their website. I described what I'd heard, the mimicry, the circling, the footsteps that matched my movement. I gave them the area, the campsites, the dates. The ranger who wrote back was polite. He said there'd been no reports from that corridor. He mentioned that raccoons fed by humans sometimes lose their fear. He mentioned that sound carries strangely through hollow terrain in that region. He did not mention what could have said my name. I found a forum about 6 months later, a hiking board dedicated to the Shawnee backcountry. There was a thread from 2021, 2 people, separate trips, same general area around Camel Rock and Sand Cave Branch. One described footsteps that matched their pace. The other said they'd heard a voice. They'd both written it off as exhaustion, sound tricks. I almost left a comment. I didn't. I'm not sure what I would have said. I've camped a lot of places. I'll camp a lot more, but I haven't gone back to that section of the Shawnee. Some quiet lasts until it doesn't. And when it breaks in a place that remote, there's no one close enough to hear it but you.